Yeah, I'm already blocked by, what is it, Dad Slot or whoever Will the Landman is. But on the Twitter twatters, um, this one Mr. Eddie Robson is saying, and you always get people saying, why not create new characters who aren't straight white men, missing the point that characters like that are being created all the time, but it's hard for them to compete with famous iconic characters with decades of history behind them. It's a franchise-dominated landscape, and you can't just will new franchises into being. You'll make much faster progress by diversifying the franchises that already exist. This is like a offshoot of the whole pulp cult thing that Mr. Niemeyer talks about in his book. And it's just... that's the reason why we're not going to get stuff like, Hercules or Xena or, some fun stuff that happened in the, I would say, from the 50s all the way up to the 90s. The 2000 plus, but especially in the 2010 range and beyond, it's all been, let's keep the pulp cult zombie shuffling along because they have established, fan bases we can try to farm. And, honestly, whether you're coming in from the indie angle or more established angle, fan bases will cling to certain things that they found, initially very worthwhile within these franchises. And it's a hard thing to, break. Now, are there some indies and everybody out there doing it? Yeah, they're getting on the bandwagon with other things, but it's not going to be a big kind of Hunger Games, Twilight, whatever, MCU debacle kind of explosion that's going to happen overnight. People are starting to get burnt out on certain things, especially, man, the Koof Koof does have a silver lining. It has murdered Hollywood. It has murdered Hollywood with like a 2x4. And now they're all trying to make up for the fact of this with, if you sign up for this exclusive blah blah blah, you'll get to see this on XYZ streaming service. And it's just like, you know what? Nope. Oh, hello, high seas. But even then, I don't even want to pirate shit like, The Witcher or the Invincible crap or the Boys crap. There's so many shows out there that I'm not even galvanized to watch, and so I just rewatch old shit that I've enjoyed. Like the Babylon 5s and the old time Lost in Space and the X-1 radio plays and things like that. All the old shit. Because at least the old shit had a more, positive bent on what's going to happen in the future. I mean, you could have a very well-written dystopia, but I'm not going to look at that as much. And one of the biggest reasons why I'm even playing a little bit of Nier right now, for Nier Replicant, is because my brother bought it for me as a birthday gift. So I'm taking a look at that. But like with everything else, with being primary writing, even my gaming has fallen off to the wayside. Which now I can see why there is that complaint about, yes, we'll read your book, and it's thousands of people saying they'll read your book, and then it only ends up being like the Fellowship of the Ring that reads it. That came across my feed earlier today. Which, I do try my best to support friends and pulp stuff I want to see by actually buying it out the gate. But when I'll get around to reading it, it'll probably be a few months to a year from now, because when I do try to read, I can still read at a pretty good clip. But I'm basically reading like 400 to 600 pages on like a Sunday, but not only just of one thing, but multiple things, and then just filming or recording stuff to put out for reviews later. And I try to kind of go back and forth. This is kind of more off the cuff because it's just something I saw on my thing earlier. But Pulp Cult does not know how to create. It just knows how to burrow under the skin of a former franchise and wear it as a meat suit. That's basically it. They say they want X, Y, or Z. Well, it's kind of like imposter syndrome, too. If you really want that, then put your nose to the grindstone and create it. Are you being gate kept out of something? Well, then make your own IP, and then you can basically set things up 100% the way you want it. Uh, Biggest reason why I made Lorraine and Eliza like a same-sex couple is because I wanted to see a Xena and Gabrielle dynamic where it wouldn't end in a complete downer ending. You know, it's not quite what do you call it, like a berserk style setup, not quite to that level of depression. But they didn't exactly have the most cheerful of endings there towards the end. Did I like some of the meta, like they're reincarnated and see each other again through various lifetimes in different ways? Like, yeah, that was fun. But my main thing is I just wanted to see a same-sex couple genuinely happy and comfortable with each other, and they're not gonna have the whole, uh-oh, here comes the sad ending where everything doesn't make a lick of sense, and it's just sad to be dramatic and like kind of like a bring you down, and like, oh boy. What's funny is those near games, um they have a more positive ending in spite of their setting. So I guess you could say the near games kind of subvert in a different way. But then again, the Japanese, setup, I guess it's just based on how you're raised. They probably have a more kind of open-ended, you can interpret things more, I guess, if you want to. But me, yeah, when it comes to my stuff, I just want something that was fun to escape to for a little while, where family secrets would bring people closer together rather than ripping them apart, and that there's a bit of playfulness, like you'll see with this next artwork that Old Khan's doing. That there's a sense of playfulness in these characters, at least as far as the good guys are concerned. The bad guys, the bad guys are going to earn all their lovely little karmic, they're all fucking doomed kind of storylines anyway. The closest people I have going through a redemption arc really is Anna and the Piper, and they're pretty much on the good guys side. So yes, some of the good guys will get their redemption arcs. Anna is in a state of shock over the fact that she doesn't quite hate the golden child anymore, but it's not like they're bestest buddies. But she has a begrudging respect now for the absolute cornball that is, the Star Spangled Banner, even if she won't outwardly admit it too much. So, that's just this basic setup there. But yeah, as far as to get back to the whole, oh, why isn't there more X, Y, or Z? Well, one, yes, a lot of these franchises have been around for a while, but a lot of these franchises were influenced by older stuff that has been around since the days of Homer, the Iliad, Odyssey, a bunch of basic archetypes that have been with us since the oral telling days. If it's not there, then make it. The reason why Xena and Gabrielle are a more full-fledged couple to me than that Korra and Asami setup ever were, is because Xena and Gabrielle actually built up a friendship in addition to, more romantic overtones. Because to me, a healthier couple, pretty much, they'll have like friendship aspects, but they'll also have, that more closer trust kind of thing. And like, boom, like there you go. They have a little bit of both. And I'm hoping that some of that's coming across in my own work. Like I said, this is something that where, the overall finished product, I still got about another year and a half before it'll ultimately be done. I'm going at a pretty good clip. I'm already on issue 13 of book 4 here. But, again, the way I build things, just do the little rough couple lines for the outline, and then it's like, okay, this is where I'm going to place this bit of action, here's where this dialogue is. These franchises didn't get built up overnight. A lot of times, some of them didn't even explode outward until later. Like, even back in the old days of radio, H.G. Wells's stuff, some of it didn't get on the bigger kind of pulse of things until the War of the Worlds went out over the radio. Um, Kind of like how even nowadays, that's the reason why pop cult wants to take over and control a lot of shows and visual mediums, shows, comics, movies, because those will reach wider audiences than just, books alone. Even though I'm having a resurgence in, going back to older and older books, because they're not as how do you say it, kind of like influenced by modern media as stuff is nowadays. It's still kind of like you're already splitting the audience, where there's some that will only consume the visual mediums of that particular franchise, and then you got others that will actually go back to where that franchise started. So yeah, if you want to see more same-sex relationships and all that other stuff, then you'll have to make characters where they have motivations beyond who they basically sleep with. You'll have to have them have motivations beyond the arbitrary aspect of skin color. You'll have to have motivations beyond the arbitrary aspect of, oh, were they born rich, poor, or in the middle. They'll have to have like some sort of internal drive beyond what their circumstances are, or even what that character's personal politics might be, or point of view. It's just the way I pretty much see it, and it's all my opinion here. But yeah, that's the reason why I keep beating the dead horse of, like, if you don't see it on the shelf, then make it. If you're not a programmer, write the outline. If you're not a visual artist, then write the screenplay. If you're not a writer but you can draw, then make the concept art and put in, like, okay, this is how I want this character to be. Here's their overall little thing that's going on. And then find other like-minded people and produce it. And it doesn't even have to be a big screen thing. Like, more and more stuff is getting kickstarted and stuff for even just basic, regular films that people are just doing themselves, buying the equipment. It might take longer because you don't have the resources of the Hollywood types, but even then, a lot of those guys are starting to lose their shirts, even if they're still propping up the idea of the messages above everything. Well, once you really run out of money, I guess they're gonna go ask the government, like, hey, government, can you prop us up some even more? But that's not always gonna be there. At least I don't think. Oh boy. Yeah, I guess this is just one of those rambles for today. What do you guys think? Is there another way we can build up stuff outside of pulp cult? I know Mr. Bryan has mentioned the neo-patronage, which, that does seem to be a pretty good springboard. You can cater to certain kinds of subsects of audiences and build up the finances from there by specifically catering to what kind of wheelhouse they want, versus some of the more mainstream offerings. But then again, like with everything else, there's a double-edged sword everywhere. If you're going to go with one route, you might have to compensate for other routes too. Like, again, like if you're a fairly experienced writer and you don't particularly like a certain kind of genre or wheelhouse, but you want to make some, say, money is your overall goal, you might have to make some compromises to where, okay, I gotta write more to market than more for myself. But the whole thing is, the TLDR of this is, all these established franchises did not start off that way. They had to build momentum, and then they had to find a pulse within the general viewing public, which in the old days was radio. Then it morphed to, records, CDs, gaming. As the mediums developed and expanded, yeah, Most people nowadays are more keyed into visual mediums. So a lot of these franchises that really got the kickstart transferred to a more visual medium. And then, of course, some of them ended up having more expanded content in the form of books later on to keep certain aspects alive, which is more than just, the Star Wars and all that stuff. It also includes Star Trek and even Doctor Who and everybody else that's fairly long running franchise. They were able to break away and expand outward after they made their initial splash visually. And heck, even some things in the beginning weren't taken for like how to say this. Some things that when it started out, some people didn't have as much faith behind them. Like again, Babylon 5 hung on by the seat of its pants most of the time when it came to syndication. And then, you'll have them gamble on other things where they don't think it'll work in the beginning. I think the original Star Trek faced some of that. And then eventually these things exploded outward, which is the reason why Pulp Cult wants to co-opt it. So that way they're like, oh, you know what? Yeah, I don't feel like supporting a new character. I just want to steal the mantle of the old character and put it onto something else. You have to build up a character's mythos before it'll, it might not even land for a while. And the way these corporations ignore characters that they already have in their stable, you're not going to see kind of like more expanded stuff with, say, God, who can I use from Dead IP Land? Like the Silencer, Abnett's Silencer. She only got about 20 issues, and then they basically tapered off. And it's like, okay, every time DC tries these new things, they fall flat on their face because people do want to see the established characters doing things. So I'm thinking that if you're going to introduce new characters, then have them a guest character in an established setting, and then you can break them off when they become popular enough to create, their own mini-series. I wouldn't even say, don't do a long on-running series for an unknown character. Introduce them into an established universe, and then maybe have them have a couple one-shots, then collect those one-shots together. Because even old serials, that's how they did this to build up certain characters, like Sherlock Holmes and everything. You think Sherlock Holmes started off being kind of like a more famous character? No. It grew from the serials and the pulps that he was in for years, decades, and whatnot. And eventually, that exploded outward. So yeah, if I've even seen it with like some Kickstarters. Some people will have a shared universe, and they'll springboard different ideas in that universe. And if the character becomes consistent enough, kind of like even like Common America, you can eventually build a franchise behind them or setting. But you got to keep poking at it. You just can't do it one and done and expect this character to pop on screen and be like, take everybody by storm. Sometimes some characters take longer to cook in the oven. So yeah, that's about it for today. This somewhat long running ramble. Yeah. Take that character, say like put it in the iconic adventures of Mr. X, and then guest starring the Spider, just to make up something, and then slowly take the Spider character and like have it run through a couple of guest experiences, and then say like if that character becomes noteworthy enough, then have like couple one shots, build it up into like a little mini series of say part 1 of 6. And then, if they really do make an impression on people, then you can start being like, okay, we could do a limited ongoing series. And it can even translate from a visual medium like comics to even books. Because this has probably happened in Bookland too, where some character is just like a minor character in one book. but they get enough traction to where people want to know more about them. Even Galaxy's Edge had a offshoot of this, you know, where everybody wanted to know more about a certain Mr. Someone. So eventually they did the side series that expanded on him, and they just kept going from there. You can find a lot of examples if you just take a moment to really look. Nobody's series will start off being gangbusters from the very beginning. People just seem to look at like what the end result is. Sometimes when you're building something and it doesn't have enough traction in the beginning, that's because it's not a known quantity yet. Don't give up, okay guys? Have a good day.